This year's NBA trade deadline saw quite a few teams get aggressive and acquire star-level talent to make a playoff push for the remainder of the year. Admittedly, the trade that went down between the Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn Nets that swapped James Harden and Ben Simmons dominated the headlines and overall coverage by media and fans alike, but another deal went down that I think needs to be discussed because of just how preposterous that it was. The trade in question, of course, is the one that happened between the Sacramento Kings and the Indiana Pacers, headlined by a swap of Tyrese Haliburton and Domantas Sabonis. When big-name players are traded like this, you can usually see where each team is coming from, even if the deal favors one side or the other. But for today's video, I really need to discuss why this trade was a complete mess for the Sacramento Kings. I vehemently disagree with them pulling the trigger here, especially with how long it's been since they've actually had any real success and the current state of the future of their team. Before we start though, I want to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. PrizePicks is the perfect service for all of us basketball fans here because when you're involved, it makes watching games every night so much more fun and engaging. Basically, it's an application that provides you with lines on all kinds of individual player props, such as points, rebounds, assists, and three-pointers made amongst others, and you simply have to choose whether you believe they will record over the set amount in the line or under the set amount in the line. Make your selections, wager however much you want to, and if your picks hit, you can win some big money. For some picks that I'm looking at making for today's slate of games, I'm thinking of going with De'Aaron Fox to dish out over 4.5 assists, Patty Mills to score over 13.5 points, and Jaren Jackson Jr. to make over 1.5 threes. If this sounds at all intriguing to you, then go use the link down in the description of the video to sign up today, and use promo code REFERENCE to receive a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. Once again, thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The Sacramento Kings haven't exactly been what you would call a successful NBA franchise for the better part of the last 20 years. The last time they made the playoffs was all the way back in 2006, and the last time they won a playoff series was in 2004, so needless to say, they've been starving for any kind of success, and that can definitely lead to desperation. The Kings have had periods since then where they had good players they could have built around, such as DeMarcus Cousins, who was probably the best center in the league for a brief stretch, but they still couldn't complete the puzzle well enough to put themselves into playoff contention. And now we've all basically just grown accustomed to seeing them near the bottom of the standings year after year. From the front office, to the coaching staff, to the players that go out on the floor and compete every night, everywhere you look in this organization, there's been dysfunction. Rebuilding is typically a process that teams go through when they shift their focus towards building their future through the draft, by losing a ton of games, using their resulting lottery pick to acquire the best talent available, and then watching that young core blossom down the line. The issue with the Kings rebuild, though, is that they've been one of the worst drafting teams of the last decade, with some of their biggest misses including taking players like Thomas Robinson 5th overall in 2012, Nick Stauskas 8th overall in 2014, Willie Cauley-Stein 6th overall in 2015, Marquise Chris 8th overall in 2016, and Marvin Bagley notoriously taken 2nd overall in 2018 over players like Luka Doncic and Trae Young. It's tough to rebuild properly when the entire premises of the rebuild is predicated on you hitting on a few of your lottery picks and going from there. So when almost all of those picks end up being guys more suited for the end of the bench at the NBA level, it sets you back even further. On top of that, since their last playoff appearance, the team has had 11 different head coaches. A young team lacking in star talent at least needs consistency at the top to develop and become the best version of themselves, so again, it's just been a recipe for disaster the whole time. I know it sounds like I'm just rambling on, but I promise I'm getting to the point. I just needed to lay out the context for why I feel how I feel before I get into all of the other details. After all of that dysfunction, the Kings finally started to hit on some of their recent draft picks, nailing the De'Aaron Fox selection back in 2017 and hitting an absolute home run on the Tyrese Haliburton selection in 2020. When you finally start to hit on a few of those picks and get a couple of young studs in the draft, that's when your rebuild truly begins. Again, I realize patience has to be running thin in Sacramento because of how long it's been since they've last done anything notable, but you can't rush success. Just ask the Golden State Warriors, who built their dynasty through the draft. Tyrese Haliburton is 21 years old, and he's been the best player on the Kings this season. He's the only player in NBA history under the age of 24 to average at least 14 points and 7 assists per game, while also shooting over 40% from 3. His ability to read defenses, stay under control, make the right reads, and convert based on what's being given to him by the defense, to stay incredibly efficient while doing that stuff too, we've literally only seen from All-Stars and Hall of Famers at his age. Now, if we adjust those parameters that I listed previously down to players under age 24 in league history who averaged 14 and 7 while shooting at least only 36% from 3 because of how the modern era of shooting could possibly inflate things, we find ourselves with Haliburton being in some pretty damn good company. This has happened 11 other times in history for players this young. Twice by future Hall of Famer Chris Paul, another 2 were done recently by All-Star Trae Young, and the rest of the list is made up of Jrue Holiday, Deron Williams, Tim Hardaway Sr., Mark Price, Darius Garland, Mike Bibby, and his old teammate De'Aaron Fox. Haliburton, at the very least, has future All-Star written all over him. He's also someone who brings it on both ends of the floor on offense and defense, and is a terrific perimeter defender. So that, on top of how malleable his offensive game is for literally any system, makes him the kind of player you hold on to as long as you possibly can. This is just his second season, so within restricted free agency, the Kings could have had him locked into their future for the next 7 years at minimum. And he's a guy who wanted to be in Sacramento to build something special. You don't see many people that actually want to be a Sacramento King, but he was the one person who did. Instead, they traded him in a quote-unquote win-now move for a player in Domantas Sabonis, who is in the middle of his prime, yet I don't see how he elevates this team to a level worth pursuing. The Sacramento Kings, as currently constructed now with Domantas Sabonis, are still not viable threats. Their ceiling at absolute best case scenario is maybe becoming an 8 seed in the playoffs. That's not even guaranteed either. That's literally just the best that they could possibly hope for at this point in time. And when teams are in this kind of situation where their ceiling is middle of the pack at best, it's typically a sign that they should start to rebuild, and who better to rebuild around than a 21-year-old point guard already showing all-star potential? Like, I feel like I'm losing my mind here. Sabonis is not a bad player by any means, but when you trade for players at their best, like the Kings just did, you have to ask, what is the plan here? And I just don't think the Kings have one. This is a win-now move that will be devoid of any of the winning, and while I know this video was a bit harsh, that's because it needs to be. Hell, they just lost to the Brooklyn Nets without Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, or Ben Simmons even playing. If I'm wrong, then I'll gladly admit it when the Kings become contenders in the near future with this group, but I just don't think they ever will, and we're now set for an even longer period of mediocre Kings basketball. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about this trade. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.